Hi, everybody. Welcome to the teacher feature for the International Herb Symposium. Super excited to have Kat Maier here. And Kat's a former president of United Plant Savers and longtime friend of Rosemary Gladstar. She has a long history with the International Herb Symposium. And she's going to be doing an intensive on energetic herbalism. And so I'll let her introduce herself and talk about her intensive and also talk a little bit about her book that she published, what, 5 years? 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Boy, you lose track, don't you?
Yeah.
I think it's 4 years ago, but I'm gonna go look that up. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Susan. Yeah, so it's so great. Susan is in Virginia, I'm in Virginia, and I just really want to note part of my thrill with the book was writing about medicine of place. And so Susan and I have been dear friends, in these mountains, really loving all the incredible flora. And there really are teachers here. So really honoring the international. And we were chatting before this, and I was trying to remember when was my first, because I've been going for many, many years and lots of incredible stories. And so I know that there's some wild stories and crazy stories. The herbal ball that has always been hosted is such a celebration. But one of the things that has meant the most to me is, and I really like to share this with students, is when you're going to conferences, and it's so fabulous that this is going to be in person. And I say to my students, it's really important to meet your teachers and not just online. So the fact that this is in person, online. And so one of my prayers going to conferences, I would always ask, just take me to the teachers, really, I hold in my heart, you get there and you have these schedules and the way Rosemary had them, every hour there were like 10 crazy great classes, and how do I choose? And so what I always love is, having that intention when you're going to a conference of, let me hear what I need to hear, meet the person. And I have to say, at three major teachers of mine, all the internationals have just been so profound in bringing, the global traditions. The last one, Susan, that you held, that fabulous teacher from Turkey, and the roses and the harvest, and looking at the marigolds in India, and just all these crazy great plant traditions that, yes, we have this access internationally online now, but to meet these people and to feel how grateful they are that they're in the United States, sharing this wisdom is really profound. But three profound teachers of mine that changed my life, changed my teachings. I have met at the international, along with then just meeting other teachers and then the community. So I'm so grateful, and I really love that it's going to be at Cincinnati, because as a clinician and as somebody who had a clinical school for many, many years, I'm constantly inviting herbalists with clinical experience to step out and teach these skills. And the eclectic physicians were profound teachers of mine. Dang, you would read about Black Cohosh or Elecampane. They had direct clinical experience, and they would have phrases. They would have, these clinical pearls that you can't believe when you apply these plants that these eclectics worked with in their clinic. And they did acknowledge natives, and they did acknowledge, I know that there's certain, criticism of stolen medicine, but, so many of them were side by side, really inclusive, really inviting many, many folks, whether Black women, other races who could not get into medicine. So, this is a really, really important tradition. So when we're talking about medicine of place, it's not just the valleys, it also is the culture. And so being able to go and experience the culture of the eclectics is going to be really important. And then also bringing this tradition to herbal medicine, because it's amazing how many folks aren't aware of their writings. And I do want to say, I know I'm kind of rambling on here, but it's near and dear to my heart. And these books, it can be incredibly expensive, right? Great libraries. Now UPS is inheriting incredible libraries. But I want to say Michael Moore, the herbalist, Southwest School of Botanical Medicine, and Henriette Kress, credible Finnish herbalist. They have the eclectic text downloaded on their website. You don't need a lot of money. You can go in, and they're just incredibly cataloged. So I'm just really excited that this rich materia medica is going to come to light, um,
Mhm.
being in Cincinnati. And so you
Uh,
had mentioned, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so maybe talk a little bit about how you define energetic herbalism and, what elements from, the eclectics that kind of got brought into um,
Yeah,
energetics, and then maybe, kind of highlights that you'll touch on in your intensive.
yeah, great. Thank you. Um, yeah, well, it's so funny, when you write a book, you realize, and I love my publisher because we really had a footnote. I had a site, and I'm so, so grateful for that, because there's so many urban myths that I was teaching, that I had heard and teaching. So I really needed to know what I was saying and support it. So I pretty much lived in the eclectic text, because they were the kind of OG of all that. So the energetics, they really understood what the movement and the actions and implied in herbal actions are the energetics. So in explaining energetics, let me just say, folks that practice traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, this is their ABCs. Energetic herbalism essentially is foundation. This is how you speak the language. So this is nothing new to those traditions. And so with Western herbalists, it took me, 10, 15 years before I came to, oh, is the herb hot? Is it cold? Is it drying? Is it damp? Does it relax? How is this plant affecting our inner terrain? And if I run hot, I don't want to be taking ashwagandha, because ashwagandha is really warming and it kind of heats me up. And so, a lot of the eclectics had their clinical applications really aligned with what those energetics are. And so I'm really excited to teach this intensive, because I'm also really excited that the book, my energetic herbalism book, is doing so well and is being used as a textbook in herb schools, because we are realizing, oh, this is where we begin. Instead of understanding, oh, it's a respiratory tonic or it's good for bronchitis. Well, what kind of bronchitis? Like dry bronchitis, wet bronchitis, learning the nature of that illness. And so that's what energetics is. It's the nature of the plant. Who is this plant, and how do they shift and change? And chickweed is so moistening and cooling. So if I don't have echinacea, which is, clears toxic heat, but I have chickweed and I have self heal, they clear toxic heat. So when you understand the energetics, you may not have that plant. And as we're moving into this time of really getting real with sustainable herbalism, not just talking about it, but really understanding, all right, what is out my back door? So understanding that plantain and, how are they expressed? And so that's what's exciting for me in energetic herbalism, and bringing that into our Western materia medica. And more folks, we are seeing writers, going to that and
Mhm.
understanding that.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that um, is really fascinating with the eclectics is when you go back and read the literature, it's so case study based, and it's like very descriptive of the individual, what they're treating, what the dosage is, and it doesn't take out the human experience of the scientific.
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
feel and I feel like today we're so most scientific literature is okay, let's remove all the elements, let's take the person out and try to extrapolate, and then we're going to use this alkaloid to see exactly how it affects a mice or whatever. And I think it's like missing the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
And it's very difficult to read. It's not accessible, and I don't think that we can remove humanity or the human spirit from the practice, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
so that's what
Absolutely.
I think is really um, interesting to think about, you know, science as a modality and research, and then also um, to not be afraid to put the spirit and soul back into science. I don't know. I'm really
No,
hoping that we rediscovered the eclectics, and
yeah.
we come to terms with we can bring this back. I mean, they're when you read their journals, I mean, it's not that they're all hocus pocus and no research. I mean, it's very deeply researched.
They are
But
so far from hocus pocus, man. These
yeah.
guys are,
So
these
anyway,
guys are straight up clinicians. And, I love how you mentioned dosage, and their case stories. And we don't use false unicorn root anymore. But 20 years ago, as a clinician, I was trying to figure out, well, what is this plant? And we had it here. And of course, we never use it. I'm so grateful for the late Michael McGuffin, who really stepped out and was such a champion to lay safety for false unicorn root. But I'll never forget this story of, I think it was Felter, who was saying, yes, this woman walked in with her and she complained of her left hip dragging. And I am telling you, when you hear the words, as clinicians, we want to hear the symptoms in our clients' and patients' language. That description it was so priceless because, in different ways. And so they brought humanity by their case stories, and they would talk about using an ounce of lobelia. I mean, this is diphtheria. This is a time when antibiotics and they needed, profound, potent medicine, and they talk about dosage and they are not afraid of dosage. And I think that's one of the hardest questions that students will ask me. But where's the dosage? Is it drop dosage? Is it a teaspoon? They have dosages, and they are heroic because a beautiful little morphine. The beauty of that is it's a dose, and it's a potent dose. And for our plants, sometimes we do need a good amount or taken frequently. And I've often go to the eclectics to really get the courage that I need to know how to work with something in the appropriate way. Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
yeah. So I'm hoping it reinvigorates like a whole new generation of herbalists to rediscover the eclectics, right?
Practitioner.
That's why that was the whole like kind of vision and mission behind moving it to Cincinnati. And I don't know if we'll do it again, but that's the
Well,
theme. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had our AHG meeting there 26 years ago, and that was the opening for me. It was like, well, who are these? We were in the libraries, we're in the stacks of these ancient texts. And so, the other thing of being in Ohio is, highlighting the United Plant Savers
yeah,
Botanical Sanctuary. That if you can, dovetail a trip into the sanctuary, this is prime. I really highly encourage people to try to make that effort because what UPS has been doing for so many well, what is it? 30, that's
30, yeah,
okay, so a generation and a half, but it's been longer than that because of the farm and the plants and it's stunning what Susan and the current crew, it's sort of our center. So to have
yeah,
it in Cincinnati and then dropping down to the sanctuary, it would be really icing on the cake. Uh,
yeah.
icing on the cake, yeah.
Well, awesome. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
No, I just hope folks, make the trip. And again, I really want to, thank Susan and UPS because it's hard, finding venues, changing it up. And change is really, really necessary and really important as we're finding out and to really make that effort, even if it's not IHS, some other conference to really make the effort to meet your teachers, to be with them in person. Things are transmitted through teachers that don't come through on Zoom. And plus it's so much darn fun getting together with
Yeah,
the outlaws and the herbalists and the plant lovers. And I know this IHS is going to be really, really special. So thank you.
awesome.
And I'll see you in Cincinnati.
Yeah.